Day 2 of 2 for Season 3 update discussions. So strap in, we've got a lot to talk about for what changed with Warzone. Drop your thoughts, drop a like, and make sure to subscribe for more coverage. Also, reminder, as of this going live, I'll have been away since before the update went live and won't be around for a few days. Subsequent B-roll footage may not be from this new update, and follow-up content regarding leaks, our seasonal class setups, and reviews or critiques, that'll be delayed by a few days with other content filling the space in between then. Anyways though, let's get into it. Firstly, Verdansk out, Verdansk in. Verdansk has been removed for good, likely not going to be seen again, as with Al Mazrah, as with Caldera, gone to the Warzone map graveyard, but in its place again, Verdansk does return. But what changed? For the most part, nothing, but there are a few things that, if we're being thorough, have actually changed with the map. Most notably, console has up to 120 FOV in Verdansk for the first time. Not necessarily a new thing since it's tech from Warzone 2 and what we've had since that introduction in 2022, but you do finally have FOV scaling on console in Verdansk, something that for the entirety of the original run, you did not. So that's definitely nice. Enhanced details are there for Verdansk, higher graphical fidelity and asset resolution. There's improvements to access around the map. Examples given were like better lighting and visibility throughout the police station near the airfield. Also listed was the two-story building by Storage Town offering roof access via a ladder that was not there before. There's a sign next to the airport car dealership that's now fallen, offering a way into the second story of the building, allowing for another flank route rather than somebody just watching the staircases up and down there. And there's more cover throughout the airstrip at the airport for a bit easier a time crossing that open tarmac. Additional changes come in the way of things like trees slightly being repositioned from the original map. Non-drivable vehicles are clearly marked with smoldering wreckage, so you can distinguish what's drivable versus what's not. Swimming is now possible in the southern coastline. There's improved traversal in steep areas with new goat trails added. There's shorter telephone and electrical poles for easier parachute landings. There are additional ladders and adjusted paths to rooftops for better accessibility. Doors are now double hinged, allowing barging, shooting, and blowing open and closed. Ascenders are returning at mid-season, but they're already there available in Plunder. There's enhanced exterior lighting, improved visibility, and reduced glare from the sun. Interior lighting has been adjusted to reduce hiding spots, especially dark corners. They added detailed enhancements, such as extra debris and scenery around fire stations and riverbanks, and a few more here with this. But as for the gameplay itself, on launch day here, mode you can play with Verdansk. Obviously, Battle Royale. Solo, duos, and trios go up to 150 players, with quads going up to 152. Battle Royale Casual was being introduced with this update, where this is meant to be like the stepping stone for beginner players from boot camp before jumping into the real deal of Battle Royale, but this comes along with 28 real players and 120 extra bots. So I'd be curious if this becomes the move for Warzone camos, if that tracks on bots as well, but we'll have to wait and see. Plunder, of course, is there, where you can earn your way up to 2 million in cash, 100 players for that. Warzone Boot Camp comes with 20 players and 24 bots, again, used to learn the map and mode as a whole. And Resurgence will return in this launch window, not at launch and this video going up, but shortly after, probably like tomorrow or this weekend. 44 players though on Rebirth Island. Area 99 is going to the sidelines for a little bit. Ranked play will be on Verdansk, but not at launch here. Ranked play is detailed to come at mid-season for the Battle Royale experience, with a fresh start for all Warzone ranked players, starting everyone at bronze again for a fresh start and fair start, all at that one point. But let's talk about core gameplay changes. Movement, it's something that was mentioned, is getting fine-tuned. This coming along with a handful of different attributes that are being adjusted, but in practice, what do these mean? What do these values actually do? Well, it's said that it's going to bring Call of Duty Warzone's movement speed closer to the spirit of the original experience while still preserving Black Ops 6's fluidity. We're also going to see jump cooldowns, reducing that cooldown effect by 40%, which it's a little too early to tell from when this video is published, and again, I won't be able to play for a bit, but bunny hopping may be back on the menu. Omni sprint side and back scaling was reduced, same with slide friction being increased, so both of those being nerfs to the effect of omni movement a bit, essentially making strafe movements and slides not as integral to the movement or as powerful per se. The loot and economy was another topic overall that has a lot of different sub points we should hit on. Firstly, the classic floating loot is back. That's obviously something that we've known about for a little bit of time now, and definitely nice to see. But we also saw updates to said loot. There's a ground loot refresh where it's all new loot. High value loot zones are being introduced to Verdansk, with more being expanded upon in Season 3 Reloaded and beyond. Duffel bags, med cabinets, and weapon lockers are now all removed to make way for the classic feeling of Verdansk. They weren't there in the original Verdansk, they're not going to be here when they return. Second chance mechanics of the Gulag tokens, reinforcement flares, and redeploy tokens have all been removed. The only ways to come back after death are Gulag victories, buyback station buybacks, or the jailbreak public events. Self-revive kits can now only be acquired via legendary supply boxes, scavenger contract, buy stations, or fire sales at said buy stations. The death tax is something that was updated as well, where that's your cash dropped upon death. This has been adjusted to assist players in returning from coming back from the Gulag, where 50% of the cash balance will drop on the ground and 50% will remain with the eliminated player, up from only 20%. So not a bad update there, especially when you consider that 30% of that overall cash you had on hand would just go and disappear into nothingness. Like, it wouldn't exist after that death. And finally, rarity outlines for loot are back, where this reintroduces the colors with rarity and the quick association related to that. Buy stations have that classical feeling. The vertical redesign is back. Should never have left the vertical design, in my opinion, but that's just me. Individual weapon purchases have also been removed, so going back to the classic buy station functionality. There's a redeploy all button now with Season 3, which is a single button shortcut at these buy stations, allowing players to redeploy all teammates simultaneously. Now, one thing to consider is that when you buy a teammate back, what happens? A flare goes up in the sky to alert any nearby enemies that somebody just used that buy station. Well, whenever you do this, doing one action for all of those buybacks you may have, up to 3, well, it's going to trigger a flare for each one of those teammates that were redeployed, not just one for one action. So nearby enemies will know how many people did get bought back, even if there were more than one. In scenarios where insufficient funds prevent players from buying back the entire squad, the redeploy all feature will actually prioritize teammates carrying the highest cash amounts too, which is pretty cool. Nice little quality of life bit there, already baked into that feature. Spawn locations of buy stations will be at the 30 static buy locations from around Verdansk originally. Pricing, you have what you see on screen here at this, where it's pretty standard. One thing that I was kind of hoping though was for the launch of Warzone, at least, and the launch of Verdansk again, is that I was kind of hoping we'd go back to the March 2020 loadout cost just for the fun of it, because if you guys don't remember, like the first week or two of original March 2020 Verdansk, it was $6,000 for a loadout drop. It was an electric time. And finally, the interact angle has been updated, where the buy station can now be accessed from any given angle, including behind it, which obviously is definitely a nice help. Contracts, you have your classics coming back, but there was a contract adjustment to the supply run where that will no longer appear until the first circle has fully collapsed. So that is a second circle and on contract in Battle Royale. Plunder, probably still just fine and there all the time. Contract multipliers are also returning from the Verdansk era, where it said each contract completed now grants 30% cash bonus, stacking up to a maximum of 150% additional cash rewards in both Battle Royale and Resurgence modes. Now, very curiously, they do omit whether or not XP is multiplied for the contract completion, and that's kind of a big deal when it comes to farming, because in the past, contract farming was just such an easy way to rank up, say, weapons or something like that. You could just farm supply run contracts, take a helicopter, go from one to the next. You could do 10 to 12 contracts in any given game of plunder, and it would take your weapon XP to the moon. We don't know if that's going to be the case anymore. Public events, you're going to have available fire sale, jailbreaks, loadout drops, and restocks, and removed are flybys, cash drops, contractor, rogue signal, runaway trains, and the recon flyovers. Armor had a couple of things we should talk about, where the max armor is down from 6 by default now to the original 5. The armor satchel capacity is now allowing for the 8 original satchel armor plates, where armor drops now from eliminated players consistently drop 1 armor plate upon death, but that does not apply to boot camp or battle royale casual bots. And Gulag armor in unranked is removed. Field upgrades, you'll see a new field upgrade squad widget, allowing you to see what field upgrades your teammates have. Enabled are the armor box, deployable cover, heartbeat sensor, munitions box, recon drone, trophy system, and utility box, though not seen out in the wild. That's only available via the battle ready wildcard. And removed were the deployable buy station, portable decontamination station, portable radar, portable redeploy drone beacon, reinforcement flare, scrambler, and war cry. We did see the heartbeat sensor actually did get an update, where that base battery life is now up to 120 seconds or 2 minutes rather than just 1. Kill streaks, the precision airstrike indicator, was actually removed, so taking away that quality of life feature, but all in the sort of idea of preserving that original Verdansk feeling, where it was terrifying. You didn't know if you were going to die or where that may be coming from. So that's something that's not being added, but rather taken away. Crowded airspace notifications is going to let you know airspace too crowded as soon as you aim down sight with a kill streak. So that'll give you just an extra heads up of like, hey, you don't have to line this up. It's not ready type of thing. Perks. Your lootable perks were all removed from Verdansk, though they did say that it's possible they could return in the future, depending on feedback. Vehicles, you have your helicopter, cargo truck, Polaris, LTV, and ATV, where they tuned movement, health, damage resistance, and equipment interactions to feel closer to the original vision. Vulnerability is actually insanely close to the original Warzone experience as well, where they detailed the damage charts associated with each of these vehicles. And C4 might be back on the menu, boys. Might be back. Might be taking out those SUVs in one hit, just like old days. The UI and UX ended up having a couple of updates here at this, where firstly, you have classic stuff like the classic victory screen, tac map and compass icons, ping visuals, and score feed colors, but you have new and updated things as well. For the new, you have a weapon inspect to view attachments, where this is something that's a setting that you can either enable or disable that will allow you to see the attachments anytime you inspect a weapon. So it'll automatically bring up on the bottom right of your HUD what attachments are on that build. So if you pick up a random gun, you're like, wow, this looks cool, I wonder what it is, or you pick it up and you're doing well with it and you want to recreate that build, you can now do just that. There's a detailed death recap, which will show you what you were affected by when killed, live ping, UAV, unsuppressed weapon, those factors that go into giving the enemies the information on where you were. That's going to be something that is laid out right for you at that point, which is, I think, a huge thing. I know that this is something that a lot of people love to say, he's cheating. That's a knee-jerk reaction that sometimes I even do too. It's totally natural because it's just, again, a knee-jerk reaction. But now to be able to see where somebody may have actually had the jump on you and how, that's going to be super beneficial, I think, to perhaps clearing the air, but also giving you the heads up on what to do to avoid that next time. There's a prioritized favorite loadout in the gunsmith feature, which will allow you to move your favorite to the top, so you don't have to keep building something out in loadout 1 every single time you want to change your favorite weapon of the day or week, whatever the case. And then we're also seeing mission items and squad widgets being added, which is like key cards or Easter egg items on that squad HUD. Updated user interface stuff. Navigation pings are now clearer in its iconography. Player icons, the minimap and tac map were improved to differentiate talking, firing a weapon, staying quiet, and the ghost perk on or off. A lot of those things kind of bled in together and seemed like the same effects on the minimap and the tac map, so those are now being a bit more distinguished. Audio, there's returning classic audio for so much stuff. Cinematics, music, announcer, hit markers, death's door, footstep recording, loot chest, buy stations, contract, UI sounds, all that is going to be the originals. For some updates, we saw that occlusion and reverb for audio was transitioned from the older raycasted occlusion system to Microsoft's Triton Acoustics audio middleware, which, if I'm not mistaken, is where we're kind of at right now, but like talking transitioning the old systems to where we are now. So improving stuff with this update, sure, but also bringing it up more to speed with those updates retroactive over the last couple of years. Footsteps and ladders now have unique tuning for Warzone footsteps separate from premium titles. That was something that was introduced in Modern Warfare 3, where friendly footsteps are reduced. Footstep loudness dynamically scales with the player speed. The footstep pitch is changed based on elevation, above versus below, which is definitely something that is a very big thing that you might just completely overlook, because now you're going to actually have that audible differentiation between, okay, they're above me, below me, or on the same floor as me. So that should hopefully give you a bit more information. Ladder sounds are now amplified and adjusted based on player movement speeds. They boosted audio cues for jumping, landing, and distinctive ceiling footsteps to clearly indicate players running overhead. The Gulag is the original Gulag showers with the overtime CTF flag. That is going to be back here with this update. So going back to the original, of course. Then let's talk about some gameplay changes and updates that are like individualized items. What we talked about, I feel like, was more just categorical and things that kind of fit under an umbrella of a different topic. These ones are more so just individual based. Shooting while free falling is returning here. That's something that I'm actually very excited to see come back. Try and start a game hot, get 1 or 2 in the air, and just hit the ground running. 360-degree revive rotation is back, which was a first world problem, but it should have never gone away with Warzone 2 to begin with, in my opinion. The endgame circle pacing is faithful to the original timings of the gas closing in, as well as the sizing and moving elements of the circle. On screen, you'll see the listing for each of those and the zone pools, so that if you want to study that up, you can. Classic aesthetics for the armor plates, satchels, buy stations, contracts, loot boxes, and all, those are akin to the original designs. Interior versus external ascenders. Again, mid-season we'll see a host of the external ascenders introduced, but a more original March 2020 vibe right now is what we have with the re-release of Verdansk. Infill and backup pistols are now the 9mm PM, no longer the GS45, and late game redeploys will spawn you a bit lower in the air. Quality of life changes before we jump into weapon tuning and wrap everything up here. Player respawn angles are something that whenever you drop back in, you're going to be looking down 30 degrees rather than out at the horizon, giving a more immediate viewpoint of the battle below, which, again, if you mix that in with the late game redeploys, is definitely nice. You don't have to take that extra second or two to start looking around as you're already lower and closer to the ground where you could be getting shot at. Loot angles, the interactions now require more precise aiming for picking items up to reduce accidental item pickups. Armor plate color improvements are made to allow for players to recognize if a player does or does not have full plates. The death skull icon now has been increased to make it easier for players to locate their previous death location. Leaving matches if you have a teammate alive will now require a confirmation to bypass that and leave the game. Ping distance text on the map has added a dark backing to the ping to improve the readability of the distance on the map. There are now ping duration settings that allows players to choose between 1 to 20 seconds on how long they want that to last in their game. And then tac map centering is a new thing that allows for assistance for auto zoom and center, auto centering, and other things like that. So some cool stuff coming in with the quality of life, along with the revert to a lot of gameplay changes, but reintroduction of a lot of gameplay changes as well. But let's talk about weapon tuning here with this, because we're already so far into this video with still so much more to go. As with yesterday's video, we're going to talk more generally about these and what they mean to you as a player rather than list off specific numbers. But those will be on screen if you are interested. As you'll see, a lot of these weapons got significant buffs, putting TTK or time to kill in this bubble of discussion with the community of, is it too fast or not? But time will only tell which one that is. Starting with assault rifles though, the AK-74, its multipliers and base damage were increased, but it did take a significant hit in the damage ranges. That's kind of something you'll see across the board for all these rifles as well. So this one might take a bit of time to see the overall positive or negative, but on paper, it seems like it's more of a mid-range to maybe long close range powerhouse. The AIM's 85, the multipliers were increased, as were some of the damage profiles, but ranges were cut and the bullet velocity at base was decreased a bit, though not really what I'd consider super noticeable. It was only 20 meters per second. The AS Valve saw its multipliers decreased minus the headshot multiplier. That bullet velocity was slightly increased, and there was a slight movement speed increase as well. I wouldn't say this would push it into meta though. The Cypher 91, the multipliers decreased as with the range, though the damage did get sizable increases. The GPR saw its increased damage and headshot multipliers, but decreased the range and visual recoil. The Krieg C, ranges were nerfed substantially, multipliers increased. The Model L, ranges were nerfed substantially, but the headshot multiplier was increased while the leg and torso modifiers were decreased. The XM4 saw its damage go up, ranges down, headshot up, and the torso and bullet velocity down. Though additionally, the 100 round mag is now the 80 round mag, and the 3 round burst mod had a reduction in its fire rate. The Goblin Mark II, rounding out the rifles, honestly, not a whole ton here. It just, the ADS speed was improved by 10 milliseconds. The SMGs, again, same kind of thing here. You'll see that the ranges were decreased while the damages were increased. That's the story of the C9, but also increasing the headshot multiplier, but lowering the lower torso and leg multipliers. The Jackal PDW had a couple of its multiplayer counterpart adjustments carry over, such as the vertical and Ranger foregrip had its horizontal recoil improvements reduced. The overall recoil strength and deviation was increased, but we did also see headshot multipliers increased on this. Plus, surprisingly, not a whole ton of range nerfs, just one, while 2 of the ranges were increased and the damages were increased. So an interesting one here with this, the Compact, we saw the multipliers decreased, but again, range and damage increases, but also decreases on that minimum and medium damage range. The KSV straight up now has just range decreases and damage increases, though this only has 1 medium damage range now after the update. The PP919, same thing, but headshot multiplier was increased, as with the leg multipliers, lower torso was decreased. The PPSH, ranges down, damage up. SOG, damage and ranges up with a headshot multiplier increase and leg multiplier decrease. And finally, the Tonto 22, ranges down, damage is up, but additional increases to the headshot multiplier and lower torso multiplier, with the binary trigger getting a buff as well. Shotguns, a little bit happened here. The ASG-89 saw an increase to 2 of the ranges. The Maelstrom, same thing. Both of those also reducing the view kick strength, so making them a little easier to fire. And the Marine SP saw every range increased. So adding a bit more value to that maybe, but personally, I don't think that I'd throw that one on the loadout. Might be better if it's ground loot though. The Fang, generally speaking, got a decent buff as well, range and damage increases, while also seeing additional improvements to the headshot and leg multipliers, but bullet velocity also being increased by a sizable amount of 70 meters per second. The GPMG saw an overall buff -1 damage range decrease. The PU-21 was a little bit of a mixed bag, some decent damage range and damage adjustments, but a couple of nerfs to the ranges as well. But again, up and downs for the headshot multiplier being decreased, upper torso and lower torso and leg multipliers increased, while the bullet velocity was increased by 40 meters per second. And the XMG saw increases to the headshot multiplier, lower torso and leg, and the bullet velocity, plus a couple of those ranges and damages. Marksman rifles, your AEK kicking us off here. At its base, saw damage increases. Nothing on the base ranges were adjusted, but the full auto attachment did see a host of different range decreases, while an increase to the max damage with that full auto mod was made as well. So this one kind of really more so focusing, I think, on the full auto attachment rather than the base weapon. The DM10, we saw increases to the range and the max damage, but the minimum damage was actually decreased by 1. So will that be noticeable? I think time will have to tell, but on paper, offhand, I don't think that adds an extra shot into the equation. Your multipliers were increased, while flinch was actually reduced a little bit. The SWAT 5.56 was increased in its range and its damage, plus headshot multiplier and lower torso multiplier. The TR2, again, mixed bag, nerf on the range, buff on the damage, but probably the biggest adjustment here is this now uses AR and LMG ammo instead of DMR and sniper ammo, meaning you're going to be able to have a lot more ammo on hand here with this, as opposed to what you had before this update. The Sarkov saw an increase to the max damage and both ranges, with a slight decrease to the minimum damage range damage. Finally, the Kar 98 saw a lower torso and upper arm multiplier increase and a leg multiplier increase, meaning this is a little bit more deadly here going into Verdansk, which, I mean, I'm all for it. Bring back the Kar 98K meta, baby. Pistols, damage is down, range is up. A little bit of the flip side here with this for the 9mm. The Grakova, buffs all around. GS45, Uno reverse card, range is up, damage is down. Same thing with the Strider. Your launchers, we saw a bit of damage increases and ranges across the board here. Kind of a mixed bag on what does what, but if you think about why this is actually the case, is we're talking about all these vehicles being that main way to get around. Early Verdansk was explosive central whenever you take a look at taking out those vehicles. So maybe trying to get back to that air quote meta, if you want to call it that. And the Siren 9mm saw an increase to most of its damages and most of its ranges, but the minimum damage range was slightly decreased. That is your update for Warzone Season 3 and what all it changed. A little bit of everything here at this. Again, apologies that we don't have necessarily the most up-to-date B-roll or something like that, but being on the road trying to do this at the same time didn't quite work out in my favor. But let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of the update? You like anything in particular? Dislike anything in particular? Let me know. If you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. If you made it this far into the video, because we are so far into this, comment splat so you get the bad vibes of dying to fall damage out of the way early. You don't use that on the battlefield, you get it out here in this video comment. Let me know down below if you made it this far, but make sure you subscribe for more Black Ops 6 and Warzone coverage. Looking forward to getting back home and trying this out for myself, but thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care, and peace.